Good evening. It says I'm live. I'm assuming I'm live. So, yeah, it is the 46th week. Woo! I actually realized that 6 weeks from now will be the first of the new year. So we realistically have 5 weeks of music to get through at this point in time. I feel like that's next week, the 27th, which is Thanksgiving for those of you in the States. So that'll be kind of an interesting one. I think obviously my family will be off doing the holiday thing, but who knows, maybe some people are there or people will tune in later. And then we have the 4th, the 11th, the 18th, and then Christmas. Christmas Day as well is a Thursday as well this year. So I'm hitting all of the big United States holidays when it comes to the music live streams, and I don't know. Obviously here in Russia, none of those holidays mean anything. They are just regular Thursdays. So I'll be doing the streams as normal. But it is kind of wild to think that there are 5 weeks left. And realistically, I keep saying that I'm expecting the albums to kind of fall off in the sense that the releases feel like they're going to slow down. And I think we are seeing that. Last week, so the albums that we're going to be talking about this week, there definitely were some bigger name ones there, especially in the rap sphere. There were a few also in the pop end of things that I didn't actually get around to listening to, and that I will, I'm sure, get around to this next week. But I'm going to assume that since this isn't the final Friday of, next Friday is the final next Friday is the final Friday of November, and I feel like that is probably going to be when we see the last big batch pop out. I know I've been theorizing about this for a long time. I'm actually very interested to see if the record release schedule falls off after the end of November like it does in the West. I wasn't sure, just because here, again, the holidays are slightly more delayed, but since December everywhere, at least in the sort of Western world, and Russia is part of the Western world, I don't want to hear any arguments otherwise. Anywhere that is in the Western world, December tends to be the big, and not only the Western world, I should say, it tends to be the period of time when everyone wants to hear holiday music. And I know if you look at record releases in the States and in like the UK in December, they tend to be the sort of Christmas cover type albums. So I don't know if we're going to see something like that. If that's the case, I'm probably not going to be covering any of that. We'll figure out what happens to that. But let's talk about the new music. It's already 3 minutes into this, and I've been going on long enough. We have 10 albums, 10 releases that we're going to talk about, but one of them is very special. And it's special because it's probably the longest release we've seen this year. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to it. That's coming later up. Of the releases, there are only 2 genres. We're looking at rap and hip hop, and we're talking pop and indie. A bunch of electronic music came out. I just didn't get around to it. And what I've been seeing is just basically no rock and metal releases. There have been a few, but just nothing that really caught my attention, or nothing. I will say that this week, I know I keep saying I'm going to get to the music, but I will say that this week there was a lot of releases that I listened to, and I just was a hard pass. So I did eventually put together the 10 plus lineup that we're going to be looking at today, but by and large, I probably listened to at least 5 albums before I even actually found the first one. I was just like, yeah, this is actually something worth sharing. But let's get into it. Let me just do one thing here on So we are going to be starting out with, oh, I don't need that open here, and there we go. Okay, so we're gonna be starting out with the rapper. It's an EP, and the release is Bleh, Bele, yeah. I don't know exactly, but Bleh is what I'm gonna go with. And the rapper, the artist is Entype. Now, I don't know anything about this artist, and what I read about him is that in the past he used to be more of an R&B artist, and you can hear that on some of the tracks. I just realized I don't have my headphones in. That's going to make it very difficult for me to actually. Wait, where am I? Oh, my headphones are right there. It's going to make it very difficult for me to actually listen to anything. Entype was originally an R&B style artist. Okay, I have to make sure that they connected correctly. Actually, 1 second here. I just gotta. Okay, so we're all good. We're all good. Minor technical difficulties, but we're back. You can hear the R&B sound on tracks like I'm Sorry and Night Thoughts, and I'll play those too. But I do feel like a lot of this is, I don't know, it's just like that kind of dirty South, Memphis, Houston style rap from about 20 years ago.
Полубог, мать на земле, папа на небеса. Не хожу пешком, меня везет 4 колеса. Большой черный джип, и в нем весь мут. Грабим магазин, берем весь шмот. Я молодой, то не сопрано. Мне не нужна охрана. Есть что предложить, неси купюры и макао.
I don't know if this is I don't know what the root of it is, but I have also noticed over this year quite a few references to The Sopranos in rap albums, which is not out of place, but and I feel like The Sopranos are kind of timeless in their own way, but it feels kind of weird to hear it pop up as often in 2025 as it has. So yeah, right, that kind of the dirty South sound. You can hear a little bit of the R&B there too, right?
Район научил, если руку жал, не значит кем. Еще с малых лет мысли не в тусовках, а в лаве. Про таких, как он, говорили, будущего нет. А сейчас месячный ЗП сделал за уикенд. Все поменялось, бро. Она делает вид, типа
Right, that smoothly sung choruses. And then, right, this is one of the tracks I said had a little bit, definitely the R&B sound. If that is Entype's sort of old sound, it's a little bit more obvious here.
Если я влюбился, это значит, что я влип. Ночью мысли меня губят, я сойду с ума от них. Один брат справа, другой брат слева. Да, мы едем на клаб-шоу, как будто надел. Тупо тусоваться в клубе, хуёвая схема. Я просто искренен с людьми, за это монета падает от Бога.
So, again, right, you get the idea, right? There's not anything too surprising or out of left field there, but it's a very solid release. It's for an EP. It's quite solid all the way through. There really weren't any major downsides to it. So if you're looking for something short, but that's got like a really nice kind of throwback sound, realistically, a lot of it is kind of throwback sounds at this point in time. But that's just, I think, because in the rap and hip hop scene nowadays, it's either like that archive core sound if it's new, or SoundCloud, or it just is the sound that has existed for a long time now in one variation of another. So saying a throwback sound's probably not the most correct, but it's a sound that to me feels like one that I would have expected to hear a number of years ago. So that is the EP Bleh or Beleye, and the artist is Entype. All right, up next, we have kind of an interesting one here. This is Prestige by the artist Джон Гарик. I actually, the first time I listened to this, or most of the way through my first listen of this album, I was thinking I wasn't gonna like actually talk about it. I didn't really enjoy it much the first time, and I know that's a bad start for selling this. But I kept seeing John Garik pop up again and again across rap communities over the last few months. He would release these singles, and the album artwork for the single would have these nods to online Russian meme culture. So I just sat down, pushed all the way through it, and then I gave it another spin. And there are a lot of references on this album that I'm not familiar with. I'm reporting this from other sources, to older Russian rap groups like Kravostok. But there is a lot of Lil B on this album too. For anyone who remembers Lil B, in fact, one of these tracks, SMDH, is pretty much just a Lil B track. Obviously, it's the beat, and then he does his own thing over it. And I feel like Lil B is a pretty good point of reference for John Garik, in the sense that it feels like a lot of his rhymes and lyrics are kind of off the cuff, but they're actually really, really sharp. And a lot of times there'll be references to literature that are really easy to miss because they're kind of deep cuts from literature, and not just Russian literature, but there are some references to, I suppose they're not deep cuts. If you grow up in the Russian education system, then these are all books that you would have been forced to read at one point in time or another. But regardless, the fact that they're getting referenced on these albums alongside internet memes and sort of punchlines that hinge upon a knowledge of modern day internet culture here in Russia, it's this interesting juxtaposition. You have like really lowbrow lyricism on one hand, but then some really sharp and intelligent lines on the other. So, which is good. I appreciate that. And when I see that type of stuff in lyrics, it does catch my attention. It makes me do a double take. Effectively, sort of, if someone is able to put that much into the text, then it means that it's not just some idiotic sort of whatever comes off the top of the head, that there is a method to this madness. Now, the use of some of the references to modern day Russian pop culture is probably going to cause this album lyrically to age a little poorly. But even if you don't get the lyrics, I think you might still enjoy this album because it feels a little bit like the end of the mixtape era of the rap game. Like when that period of time after Lil Wayne had made the jump from underground to kind of the mainstream, but he hadn't just completely dominated everything on the charts, and he was still like rapid fire releasing mixtapes multiple times a month. That period of like underground rap, where it was just sort of record something and put it out there as fast as possible, but oftentimes those mixtapes that were coming out in that era were much higher in quality than some of the main releases. So let me go ahead and throw some of this on. Let me actually start with the one that's a little B.
еду бабе. ТКТ-17 Глок, тебя разъебали. Я Джон Гарик, я базированный парень. Русский рэпер пошел помассировать простату. Потом подходит к майку и выдает свой гей-флоу. А моя банда преступников-гангстеров, как Death Row. Мой альбом легендарен, бро, о нем напишет The Flow. Я рэпер-патриот, бро, у меня Z-Flow. У меня дип Лондона, я Джон Гарик Тифлон. Сейчас будет панч дефолтный, но я много трогал дефлон. Ты хочешь мое шоу, бро, то накрути на телефон. И завтра уже будем в твоем городе, как телепорт. Тёлка рядом мне передает, ща типа икпор. Я включил Deep Purple и так даю ей дик в рот. Молодой дигрот, я вхожу в ее грот. Снимаю с нее шелк, это мой путь, типа как Silk Road. Панк как будто...
So again, right, lyrically, if you're not getting the lyrics, then again, you're missing a big part. But this is one of those tracks that reminded me a lot of that late mixtape era, sort of late 2000s, early 2010s, when the mixtape scene was starting to die off. But like, just the flow, the delivery, but like that really not over the top production, but that backing track feels like an artifact of that era. And this is just like a pretty fun track in general. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be one of those albums that necessarily launches John Garik into like the stratosphere here in the Russian rap scene, but I do think that for a certain group of listeners, this is going to be like an eye-opener. Я не ношу конверс, со мной шутера, как будто мы играем в Вормикс. И я вам залечу как воз. Молодой босс, у меня был навоз. Растопил сердца как воск. Нарисовал мистические образы как босс. Я патриотичен, будто на мне костюм Боска. Мне сосет тёлка, молодая соска. Не мяукает, как кошка. Обивает мою шею, ща как анаконда. X2 комбо. Уебали опа, будто это Mortal Kombat. Весь русский рэп не хочет быть со мной в контрах. Я лед, ice cold, тебе лучше выпить колдрекс. Русский рэпер гандон как контекст. Знаю дорогу на восток, бро, мне не нужен компас. Это новая классика, это мой магнум опус. Еду на Рублевку, звонит Саня магнум опус. Да ну где ты, все тебя заждались? So, it is one of those that for people who can understand the lyrics, you might get more out of it. You might get less out of it as a result. It's one of those things. This is one of those where I think it really just depends on the individual. It's not necessarily the album. I'll put it like this. It's one of those albums where I wouldn't necessarily come back to listen to it, but if it came on, I would be like A-okay to listen to it again, right? Like, it's a good album, but it's not on that level of where I personally would come back around to it. However, as is often the case, if somebody else said that this was like a really big album for them and one of their better albums of the year, I would also kind of understand that in its own way. So that is the album Prestige, and the artist is Джон Гарик. Now, this next one's an interesting one. It kind of, I don't know, kind of grew on me. The artist is Foreign Way, like four and then the letter N. Took me way too long to figure out how to read his name. Foreign Way. And the album is Реальный. Realistically, there is probably more to be said about Foreign Way, but I'm going to keep it short and just to the point. The music here sounds a lot like early Drake, as in his first album or two, and the mixtape that preceded his meteoric rise to fame. There are also some tracks that feel like old Future, and some tracks that feel like the early days of Migos. Yeah. Again, it's a throwback sound, and early Drake, Migos, and Future, lyrically, it is also on that same level. But for an artist to emulate or kind of go back to the sound of those three artists and that specific era of their career that saw them get launched into the spotlight, but then a lot of those artists kind of walked away from that format or started tweaking it to such a degree that while it's still basically the same, like Drake in 2025, for various reasons, is nowhere near close musically to the Drake of, like, let's be real, 15 years ago at this point in time. And so for Foreign Way to come in and emulate those sounds, it kind of feels fresh again. But yeah, the Drake thing hit me right away. Just, if anyone else... Just even... Even the voice is similar. Not exactly the same, but... Слушаю фьючера, топаю в школу где-то 2012. Все запрещено, носили в ранце, просто хотели внимания. Приоритеты совсем не похожие, чтобы решали задания. У меня не было старших, всегда я был лидер компании. Иногда я не знаю, что правильно, что нет. Я сел в KFC, взяв свой первый патент. Столько раз лежал, но я делал. Full disclosure, I loved the early days of Drake. I still kind of miss that era, just in general, of music at times. So this was one of those that, like, I was listening to it in the evening and I was just like, what am I listening to? This one has a lot of Migos energy.
Окей, они хотят у нас выиграть от неба. Думал, я проиграл, пересмотри вар. Дай мне повод, и я дам тебе кошмар. Снова шоу в моем райдере, Амар. Работаю больше, похуй на талант. Малая, блядь, уже лезла мой карман. На мне сейчас магазин в форме банан. Со мной картонная акустика Харман. We can go band for band, у меня 4 банд. We can go M for M, трек стоит 4 ляма. Сделал все это на скромном, такого ты встретишь не часто. Почти никогда. На мне шагатые мерчи, бро, я одеваюсь бесплатно. Арендная тачка, вожу ее, будто не надо сдавать. С кодом там. И здесь сноуборда багажник. Баленсиага и Луна мне. Ты с тобой подруг, а со мной мои типы. Если мы не матч, то мы найдем других. То мы найдем других. То мы найдем других. То мы найдем других. То мы найдем других.
So again, I'm not going to be able to pinpoint the exact specific musical phrasing for that era of rap and hip hop, early Drake, Migos, Future. But if you were there for it the first time, you should recognize a lot of these sounds. And again, it hasn't been that long since these sounds were game-changing for those artists. But like I said, they kind of got abandoned for various reasons by the artists themselves or the industry in general. So hearing it repeated or recreated with such care in 2025, I don't know. I guess I didn't realize I wanted to go back and listen to old Drake, but I guess I don't need to because there's an alternative. So yeah, that is the artist Foreign Way, and the album is Реальный. And then we're on to the final rap and hip hop release. And this is kind of the big one. This is ALBLAK 52, QUATTRO, La Famiglia. Also, this is what's the name of the American painter? Wyeth, right? He did the one with the lady in the field. What's the name of that? Andrew Wyeth. who did Christina's World, right? This is a reference to one of his paintings, which, first of all, like that right there, big plus. Has nothing to do with the music, obviously, but it is kind of an obscure reference to use as your cover art. Obviously, like your own version of it. I don't know. Maybe it's just AI art. It very well could be, but it does kind of feel like it's not really that 100% at any rate. So this is, I'm going to be honest, the overwhelming majority of the commentary online with regards to this album, if you like any post about this album that wasn't actually connected to the ALBLAK 52 community, just most of it was just people writing about how, because ALBLAK 52's QUATTRO was at the top of the Apple Music charts for Russian music. I think Kontakte Music. I don't know about Yandex because I stay away from that shit like the plague these days. Regardless, it dominated the charts this last week. And most of the commentary in the Russian rap online community was just like, well, this is just proof that our people will listen to any type of garbage, or this is only popular because the youth like to listen to it, which is kind of a dumb argument to make because the youth are the ones that are typically consuming culture more than anyone else and driving the change that we see in it through their consumption habits now, and then by those consumption habits then being refracted through their own work when they get a little bit older. But that's an entirely different argument. I first encountered ALBLAK 52 last year. 52 and Haunted was this big track where it was him and I think Bushido, or is it Kizaru he was with? Hold on, I gotta check. It was with 52 and Haunted, Kizaru. And I'll play that real fast. I think I'm gonna play this real fast because this was my first introduction to the artist last year. Yeah, April 12th. And I feel like this is a pretty good intro to the artist and like the general sound that he has.
Посмотри на стрижку, нахуя мне кепки? Кто ставил на меня давно чё? Ты поплыл белый? Чё? Ты поплыл белый? Чё?
You get the idea. And then Streets Echo 2052, I actually listened to towards the end of last year as well. And I enjoyed both of those, the single 52 and Haunted, and his album from last year, the 2052 album. But none of them were, none of it was mind-blowing. It was good, and the album from last year is a bit different from this one here, but I still think that holds up. This is not a mind-blowing, life-changing type of album on the lyrical front. And it's far from bad on the production area, too. This is just like a solid rap album. In the same way that John Garik had an album, which I would fully understand if people were like, yeah, this is like one of my favorite albums of the year, especially for people who are like really big into Russian rap. I can understand why this album might be the same thing, too. There are definitely some of these tracks on this album where I can understand, like, it feels like a track that somebody might throw on repeat, right? It's such a solid, it's just like a banger, effectively. But one of the biggest problems, and this is something that we've come into again and again, these are all just like super short tracks. And I think one of the things with albums like this is, can you just take some of the lyrics and put them into, like, expand your tracks a little bit? One of the big things with hip-hop always has been, and just music in general, like when it's really, really good, is you want to have a little bit of time to live and breathe in the track, right? You want to explore you want that a minute and a half to 2 minutes is over before you know it. So by the time you really start to get locked into the groove, sort of, it's over. And these aren't chorus, verse, chorus tracks. I mean, there are some of those where just like chorus, big verse, chorus, and that's it. Some of them are all just straight up verse too. I'm going to throw that out there. But I don't know. It feels like this is one of those situations where, and I'm not a rapper, obviously, so I'm sure somebody would tell me that, like, no, that you can't combine the lyrics from, but lyrically, most of this is kind of all the same. I'm just gonna be real with you there. So it does feel like they maybe could have just it does feel like they maybe could have combined some things together here. Let me just play a little bit this. I've been kind of yapping for a second, so let me go ahead and, damn, I don't even, I'll start with the one with Marcool on it.
Назад те дни, когда мы жили так, как будто лето навсегда, и нам никогда не было тесно или одиноко. Салют, я все помню.
Я бы хотел знать все, но мне это не надо. Стоп, снято, мы меняем все вокруг, но не для кадра. Где-то американка, а где-то 3 банана. Помню всех, с кем мы убивали кроссы и сандали. Найдется ли тут хоть один, кому нужна вся правда? Данила говорил нам всем то, что сила не в бабках. Сейчас они думают, то, что я всегда был заряжен. Шлю привет те дни, когда ничего не носили в карманах. Эй, посмотри, как мы умеем. Не лей воду, и тогда за мной не заржавеет. Быть домашним не то же самое, что и быть семейным. Мы разделим время, когда празднуем, мы сожалеем. Эй, посмотри, как мы умеем.
Sounds good. Delivery's not bad either. Not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. But look at this. We have 1:36 on this track. Nothing happens for the first 20 seconds other than just like the ride-in. And this song feels good. Like those weird sort of MIDI horn sounds in the background. And then you look and you're like, oh, we're like already on the way out of the song now. And we're basically done. This feels like a wasted opportunity, right? And that's probably my biggest complaint with this album, is not that it's bad or too short or too long. It's that there are some really good ideas here musically, and that they just get kind of like rapid fire shot off, which kind of sucks. And again, the rapping on that track was really, really good. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of Russian rap, it was solid. I guess I don't want to like praise it too much. It was good. It was good. Also, we got this sample, which is like, again, I guess in 2025 feels like a deep dive, but again, his delivery, ALBLAK's delivery, it's gonna drive some people wild. But
На мне стонго спис, но мы не прячемся. Видел настоящий флекс, поднять бабки и не
So,
сесть. Камешки багет, воу, зацени обвес.
I mean, I don't know.
Self-made, мы всегда были здесь.
I understand wholly why this dominated the charts. And also, this is part of the thing where it's just like, ALBLAK 52 is part of the 52 NGG crew from St. Petersburg. I don't fucking know. Nobody understands what the 52 NGG thing stands for. There's all sorts of random theories about it online. I don't care. But I do. The reason I want to call that out is because Friendly Thug 52 NGG released his sort of Graph of Monte Cristo album in April or something, and everybody collectively lost their goddamn mind over it. So it's like, this is like the best Russian rap album of the it. I fucking hated it. This, I think, is leagues better than that album. And this by far is not, like, in my opinion, one of the best albums of the year. But at the same point in time, I do understand why people would be hot on this, right? So I think that this is like, it's one of those albums where, again, kind of like John Garik, I wouldn't choose to listen to it again, right? But that's just a personal preference. It is objectively a good album. It's just one of those things where in rap, it kind of, a lot of it really ultimately depends on your own personal preferences in sound and delivery and things like that. And I think, again, I really think if ALBLAK in the future changes his formula a little bit, and instead of doing these goddamn TikTok video length songs and focused more on, he's very good at letting the track play out for 20 to 30 seconds before he goes in. And that's totally fine if you have a 3.5 minute track. But when your track is 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes long, you're just fucking wasting everyone's time, right? Like, at that point in time, you might as well just be doing a instrumental beat type album. I know it's harsh, but it's frustrating in that regard because it does feel like this could have been better somehow. Again, it's just my opinion, but overall, this is still a good album. I'm just being overtly critical because I feel like it is a big release and it's one of those things that needs to be discussed in one form or another because it is indicative in some way of what I think is happening by and large, not just in the rap community, but in general across a lot of the music communities. These very short tracks that are like bite-sized, but by structuring them for social media content, you effectively make them disposable, and that's not something that you want. So as a whole, good album, definitely the best rap album of the week. This is QUATTRO, La Famiglia, and the artist is ALBLAK 52, which I think that's the right 52, something like that. I think that's their sign. I'm part of the cool kids now. So anyway, moving on to pop and indie. We're gonna start with the EP Mania by Keendy. I don't know exactly how he wants that pronounced. If this was just a little bit longer, I would call it an album. It's like 20 minutes. That's my cutoff. But he did, I guess, label it himself an EP on Spotify. It does still feel like a complete statement musically. This is an artist from Belarus, if I'm not mistaken, who does seem relatively new. If you go back and look at his catalog, he first started popping up with releases only back in 2023. Musically, it is pop, but it does lean into the rock territory. I'll just go ahead and play a little bit here. Very sweet, very easy to digest. It's got a little bit of an edge to it, right? We got the guitars in the background. That's what I'm talking about. Like, it leans pretty heavily into the alt rock territory, right? But then you have other tracks, which are way more stripped down, and like it's kind of a very vulnerable pop sort of sound. There's not really anything too much to be said about this. I think it's pretty straightforward, right? But it does feel like it's one of those releases that could theoretically appeal to quite a large audience. It's got enough of that sort of dark and the edgy type of thing to it to appeal to more of the alt crowd, but it's still pop enough, and it's quite, I don't want to say depressive, but kind of the energy is more subdued, which feels kind of like the default in some ways with a lot of the pop music these days. Not all of it, but so yeah, that's the EP Mania, or Mania, I should say, by the artist Keendy, or Keendy. Again, not really sure. It's kind of right there. Here, though, we have kind of the musical opposite. And this is also one of those that would probably be easy to write off as pop rock, but this has more of a multi-genre approach to it. There is just as much, if not more, electronic and hip-hop in the mix here. This is TRAVMA, and the album is нулевая частота, or zero frequency. I feel like this is a pretty good example of what I'm starting to at least mentally call Russian internet pop, which is this amalgamation of sounds for the younger or the terminally online type of people, where it feels musically like you're scrolling through those short videos, like with those very short tracks like we were just talking about with ALBLAK. But the background music for those different videos jumps randomly, just schizophrenically from one genre to the other, and it's that constant shifting of sounds. I feel like musically just gets blended, and then it gets put out in stuff like this. So I don't know exactly how best to describe it, but it does feel like internet music. Not to mean that derisively, it's good. Obviously, there's also a bit of Crystal Castles to be heard here, too. I feel like this is a good one to start with.
Исписанные листы пишем на обоях. Квартиры, в которой жили сутки через двое. Кончились чернила, я дополню кровью. Ты останешься одной из тех грустных историй. Острые фразы оставили шрамы на губах. Я до сих пор парень, что когда-то я лгал тебе. Но я могу пообещать.
That really heavy distorted bass shows up regularly throughout the album. And I keep thinking of tattoo when I listen to this album too. So there it is again. I don't know what that bass sound is. I was trying to think, like, I feel like I want to identify it with dubstep, but at the same time, that doesn't feel 100% correct. But it irritated me a little bit at first, but then I kind of understood how it fit into the general sound. But you can hear, right? There's like sort of like Euro trance techno in here, a little bit of that dubstep bass, but then there's a little bit of that sort of alt rock sound as well. A little bit of that darker electro pop. So and there's the alt rock sound, right? I think I do want to mention too that TRAVMA is a musical artist who, there's a Russian YouTube channel called Sibirsky, which is just like a guy who lampoons Russian YouTubers, and for whatever reason TRAVMA showed up on a few of his videos, and so when I first turned on this album and I like looked at the artist, it's like, that guy seems so familiar. And so like, oh yeah, okay, yes, that's, I don't know. So he kind of fits with the terminally on, like he does the YouTube thing, he's a musician, so neither here nor there, but so yeah, it's again that sound where it's just this amalgamation of everything, but it fits together well in ways that you just can't really explain, and it's like these weird juxtapositions of sounds. Yeah, Russian internet music. I'm sure it actually could just be internet music in general, and that's probably what hyperpop is in some sense, but like this is not my full-time job. I'm just doing this for shits and giggles. So that is the album нулевая частота, and the artist is TRAVMA. Okay. Now, this is the album Ивантеевка 2-Детская, or Ивантеевка 2 Детская. I don't know what that is. I also have been trying to figure out for a long time what this album artwork is supposed to be. It feels like it's a component to something, but I don't know. This is by the group Grusha. And this is a group that we actually heard from back in the first quarter. I had them in my honorable mentions for pop releases. But they're back with another very short album this time. But in the spring, their release was very, very bouncy bubblegum type pop. Almost just ridiculously so. But it was really fun for that reason. You might remember the album artwork. If you've been following on for a while, then this album right here, which came back out in March. So this was just like, this album is musically different. It is just this eclectic mix of pop sounds from the 90s and 80s. There are tracks where it feels a little bit like Beck. Then you have tracks where there's a little bit more of an alt rap sound. There are slower R&B tracks, there are funk tracks, some of that offbeat 80s pop style tracks. It does bounce around musically from track to track. But lyrically too, it's really interesting because all of the songs are about the sort of local legends and hometown heroes of, I don't remember, they're from some small city in the Moscow Oblast. And so like all of the songs are just about local stories in one form or another. But I think this is the alt rap sounding track. Or maybe, no, I think this is the Beck one. Yeah, Beck.
Я как кораблик в бутылке плыву, набит до краев свое тело веду. Иду вдоль по проводу. Тихий берег, на отмостке в парке, возле церквушки. Там женилась мамка, у их друзей инсульт, инфаркт, инсульт. Ритмы жизни и давление вновь потопят суть. Мы просто пыль, мы тень и тень, мы тени пыли. Мы живы тем, что мы не злые. Пуская косточки черешни в небо, найдется капелька надежды, где бы ты ни был. Мы просто пыль, мы тени пыли. Мы живы тем, что мы не злые. И возле супермаркета бездомных кормим. Мы собак хоть не особо сами ели.
Yeah, this is the one that reminded me of Beck. Like the early days of Beck before he got all like mellowed out. That kind of slower, smoother R&B style sound a little bit. Probably the best track on the album is Babushka, the grandma song, which evidently is a song about a local grandmother poisoning a local crime boss via her food. So you can hear, right, over the, 4 tracks that I've showed you. And realistically, there are 9 tracks here, but the first one and the 7th one are just these little interludes. So musically, very weird little mix. Like I said, very eclectic, but it's kind of infectious. It gets in under your skin. So that is the group Grusha. And the name of the album is Ивантеевка 2 or Ивантеевка 2 Детская. Okay, final 2. And these are very, very different, but I said final 2 even though there are 3 tabs. The first one we have is by the artist Lida or Lida. I don't know how to pronounce it. And I want you to pay attention. 36 songs, 5 hours. So when I said that I had only 10 releases this week, this is part of the reason. We're going to talk about this because this is technically 2 albums in a lot of ways, but we're going to be talking about it. If you look at the links down below, I actually have it split. You can see here, disc 1, disc 2, disc 3, disc 4, bullshit. It's a single track. That's garbage. That does not count. But disc 5 is where we get into what is called Sapsan. And you can see all of the tracks are 24 minutes, 40 seconds long. Sapsan was actually released as a standalone record back in October. It was actually in my October playlist, and I did not get around to listening to it. I didn't even realize how long it was at the time. But let's talk about what I consider to be the 7/7 album, the 77 album, which are the first 3 discs. And then we'll talk about the Sapsan one here in a second. So, yeah, 77, like I said, is broken into 3 discs. That single track is not its own disc. That is absurd. Each one is identifiable. Here it is actually broken. 77 hot, 77 brute, 77 sad. They're broken into 3 different moods, if you will. Hot, brute, and sad. The total runtime between these 3 discs is something like an hour. Probably not even an hour, all things considered. So I also think of them as one disc, effectively, right? Realistically, there are a lot of tracks, but this should just be one long disc. Musically, the first one, very upbeat, very energetic, very pop. It just feels very much like a pop album. The second one, a little bit more rebellious, has a little bit more of the Euro techno energy in there. And then on the final track, it goes into like a really extreme digital breakdown type of sound. So again, that sort of punk style attitude of that way. And then the third one musically is a little bit slower and more sad. But this is just like, honestly, this is a great pop album all the way through. It's very modern. Like, there's no escaping that. But I just had so much fun listening to this album. Like, it's so well put together. It's got, like, this is mostly, I guess, what you could call, like, electro-pop in its own way. But once it gets going, over the course of what are effectively, like, 21 tracks, the bonus track, I am putting it in there. So that's 9, 8, 17, and 9, 26. Obviously, the intro tracks don't count, so we're down to 23. So 23 tracks, give or take. Pretty much all of them are good. Like, fun and enjoyable to listen to. Like, you can just kind of bounce around. Musical motifs are something that we're going to come back to in tonight, yeah, but they are very much present here as well too, which I love. Musical motifs are such an old concept, but they get abandoned by and large in favor of sort of not singles, but songs as standalone things. To have these musical motifs come up again and again, or to reappear, it's just a reminder that this is one cohesive whole. But like, so again, now we're into that second disc, where it's got a little bit more of the Euro techno, a little bit more of that rebellious punk style attitude. You can hear that a little bit here. It's just like fun. It's just fun. Also, you can see TRAVMA is here as well, and Polna Lubvi is an artist that we saw, I think, in the second quarter, and then I feel like we've seen a few of these. Maybe Baby we've seen as well. So some you know, solid guests on here. This is the sort of the darker, a little bit more melancholic sound. And while you can hear the TRAVMA sound too, in that really intense, distorted 4/4 bass type sound. And I gripe a lot about the shortness of songs, But that's kind of why I feel like this is one album where it really does just flow together. And so, whereas like on QUATTRO La Famiglia by ALBLAK 52, I was complaining about the shortness of the tracks. It's less of an issue here because these tracks oftentimes feel more like an extension of one another. I mean, sometimes the transitions aren't perfect, but there's never a moment when you're listening to this where the mood feels interrupted. That's what these little 6-second intro tracks are for. They're like the palate cleanser before the shift in sound. There's a distortion, right? This is just a really fun album, and it feels very well sequenced. It feels planned, maybe not down to every last second, but by and large, it flows. So as I was saying, even though a lot of these tracks are not super long, most of them are over 2 minutes, so thank God for that. But altogether, they feel like a cohesive product, and I have to give it, I have to give credit where it's due. Also, man's got an aesthetic. It's all dripped out, right? So 77 or 77 or whatever, really good pop album just from start to finish. It's one of those that it's relatively short, even though it's, like I said, basically 23 tracks long. It still ends up being effectively an hour, give or take, probably more like 50 minutes. But it is one of those that it just starts going and you get pulled into it. Now, Sapsan, which is the final disc, and it's the one I'm going to talk about separately over here. This is the reason each track is 24 minutes and 40 seconds long is because streaming services a lot of times have a limit to how long a track can be. And if we actually go over to Yandex Music here, and we search for Lida, and we go to Sapsan, you'll see it is listed as a single that lasts for 4 hours and 6 minutes. So that's basically what this is. This is supposed to be one long track. However, because of the way streaming services work, it was broken into a bunch of tracks and then put together as an album. However, I do like this concept. Sapsan is the high-speed train from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and the 4 hours and 6 minutes that this track lasts, or this album lasts, depending on how you want to talk about it, is supposed to represent the time it takes to go by train from Moscow to St. Petersburg, or vice versa. This is just like a wild trip. The whole thing, it's all over the place. And I'll be completely honest, I have not listened to it all the way through. I only got through the first 4 or 5 tracks. I just didn't have the actual time to sit down and listen to a 4-hour set effectively this week. But musically, it is wild. It starts out like this banger kind of electro mix. Feels at times like a rave, Tomorrowland type festival, like the type of music that you would hear kind of at the peak of a headliner set at one of those sort of electronic music festivals. And then at other times it shifts into this fever dream where there are slide whistles and calliope music. And then it goes into these sequences of electronic hardcore breakdown, like that hard bass and really glitched out stuff. And then everything will just fall away and there'll be a single piano floating there. And then it'll go back into that like really hardcore, energetic. It feels like it is supposed to be one single mix, and that as the mix goes, there are just these weird little ideas thrown in there to keep things mixed up. But the thing that I really found super enjoyable as I was going through the different wagons, if you will, on this train, is that there was, I think, 2 different musical motifs that kept appearing. So you're listening for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and it keeps going, but you'll keep hearing the same musical idea appear again and again and again. But each time it's refracted a little bit. It's twisted. It's reimagined in its own way. And so it's one of those things where even though you feel like you've just been listening and listening and listening, that musical idea will reappear, and you're just like, yes, I remember that again. And there's also some lyrics that go along with it. It is also worth noting that there are a bunch of guest musicians that show up on here, guest lyricists, guest singers, and whatnot. They're just kind of buried in the middle of the mix. I feel like some of the singers and lyrics and text from the 7/7 album are also already buried in the Sapsan album, but I'm just going to play a little bit so you get an idea. There's no good way of attempting to show this to you, but I'm going to. That's the musical motif right there. But it feels like something out of a Willy Wonka film right now. Let me get just a little further ahead here. I went too far. This is kind of what I was talking about, right? Like it's all that sort of chaotic digital style breakdown. And then it just falls away. You have this like very peaceful moment, and then but it feels very well thought out. Again, I didn't listen to it all the way through, but the slide whistle, the cartoon sound effects, right? If you just jump into it, it's completely random. But when you're listening to the thing for such a long time, there's the musical motif again. Just reimagined and completely. If you hadn't heard that the motif multiple times before, this would just sound like a bunch of nonsense. But if you recognize the motif, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's. at the motif as 8-bit. So, just keep coming back to it, right? It's again and again and again. It is honestly a fever dream, but I love this conceptually. Sapsan, first of all, as the amount of time it takes to go. I'm going to go back to the... Yeah. But I do also want to point out that Lida said the reason he released Sapsan is specifically because music has gotten too short, that the tracks have gotten to the point where they are basically ADHD levels of attention required, right? That if a track is longer than a minute and a half, people lose interest. And he specifically said that he was creating this 4-hour-long track to combat what he felt like was people losing their ability to focus on something for a long period of time. And I think like just that alone right there, in conjunction with everything else. So I feel like 77, I think he put that together with 77 because, I mean, first of all, I think a lot of people did not hear about the Sapsan release when it came out by itself, but also just as a idea of he had an album which, in terms of song structure, they were very short. Like I said, they feel like a continuous mix in their own regard. But in order to act as a counterweight to his own sort of ADHD length songs, he just slapped a 4-hour long track effectively on at the end of it, the Sapsan. So if you have 4 hours and you're up for a trip, I would recommend you give Sapsan a listen. I'm going to make my way through the rest of the album for sure. I'm not giving up on it. It's just one of those things that my trip on the train has not yet finished. But you can find Sapsan as its own link, or if you just want to listen to both of them, you can find that as well on the 77 or 77 album. But that is the artist Lida, and really phenomenal release for both of those parts to this album. But as much as I loved this album, I do have to kind of give my top pick of the week to Beautiful Boys. And Beautiful Boys is a group, just like Grusha that we talked about a little bit ago, that we've seen already this year. This is a group out of Saratov, and they had, right at the start of April, I went back and I checked because we have seen them already this year. And at the start of April, they had what I thought was one of the best sort of pop and indie albums in the first week of April. And at the time, I said that they had more of a soft rock sound, and that definitely was the case. But on a few of those tracks from their release back in April, the indie bona fide sounds, right? Like the parts of a song that you just recognize immediately as the indie sound, they could definitely be heard on that first album from earlier this year. It was not their first album, but the one from earlier this year, which I don't remember what the name of it was right now off the top of my head. It was, I guess I might as well pull that up. It was «Мы не изменимся никогда». This one right here. You might even remember the album artwork. The new album, Такая, красивая жизнь, or Such a Beautiful Life, this has the indie sounds just sort of front and center. It gives the album a very soft and uplifting sound, but it has all of the flourishes of indie. I thought of the group Grizzly Bear quite often when listening to this. It's an album that's focused on nostalgia in terms of the lyrics and whatnot. And it is reflected in the sounds as well, as it does recall groups from past decades. I mentioned Grizzly Bear. I saw references to Keen online, and some people with regards to Russian groups mentioned Brainstorm and Spleen. I don't think there's a single bad track on this album. I think this is really good, just full of lots of gorgeous songs. And I think at this point, it's the final nail in the coffin of the... It's probably not the correct term to use here, but it's the final piece of evidence that I need to say that I'm quite confident that for indie music, at least, the fourth quarter here has been far and away just the best when it comes to those releases. October was just jam-packed, and November, each week has been sort of, there have been like one or two releases that are just sort of phenomenal. So I'm just gonna play a little bit of this so you can get what I'm talking about. That sort of soft rock or that post Britpop sound is there as well too.
Сохрани меня в лицах своих теней, сохрани меня в числах и ста нижней. Я навеки
This album is such good.
Пусть сегодня приснится твоя любовь. Я дарил тебе песни, когда очень хотел. Я дарил тебе песни, когда голос мой пел. Пусть приятель художник на холодном окне нарисует твой образ мне. Я бреду между зданий, душа моя в рваных ранах. Ты мой свежий воздух, жаль, что чаще дышать невозможно. Я навеки потерян, давай уже сменим тему, вернуть назад бы время и спеть все, что мы с тобой не спели. И спеть все, что мы с тобой не спели.
So good.
И спеть все, что мы с тобой не...
This is the track where I feel like the Grizzly Bear reference makes the most sense. But if you're familiar with the group Grizzly Bear, just
А что ты делаешь в моей голове? Ты лес и звезды, и в небе седина. Я не хочу больше рядом с тобой. И что мне делать с собой? Думаешь, сойду с тихим. Окна, где тебя искать? Где тебя искать? Если ты уедешь навсегда, где тебя искать? Где тебя искать? Если ты уедешь навсегда.
and I mean I would gladly listen to this whole thing again. But I think this is probably my favorite track on the entire album. So I'm just gonna.
Ты расцветаешь, и вдруг расцветают цветы. Ты как будто бы лучшая в мире. Но города нам соврут и года заберут. Мы проснемся в одной квартире. Я опустил якоря и с любовью идя, я рассматривал в небе звезды. И нужно точки над «и» нам расставить давно. Мы с тобой не друзья, а гости. Будто бы ты лучше всех. Но знаешь, мы с тобой уходим вдвоем под одинокой луной. Все проблемы пережили.
From start to finish, just so well constructed, so much energy here. I cannot stress enough just how many good indie releases there have been in the last period of time. And this is just another one to add to the list.
Я все
that right there, definitely without a doubt my top pick of the week. There's no doubt about it. That is the album Takaya, красивая жизнь, Such a Beautiful Life, and the artist is Beautiful Boys. So that will do it for music this week. We had a bit of a fall off there, but hopefully, yeah, a bit short in terms of albums. Partly that's just due to the fact that the Sapsan album was so long. I actually sat down and tried to listen to it all the way through. But also, like I said at the beginning, how I effectively listened to a bunch of stuff Friday into Saturday, and just a lot of it was not great. So yeah, well, we'll see. I actually have no idea what the release schedule is like this week. How many releases are coming out? But it's okay. I actually have a few albums already lined up for next week, 3 at least, perhaps, that I had started to listen to, or I had listened to once, and I just didn't get back around to them because I've been kind of busy too. We're doing all sorts of fun bureaucratic stuff currently, and that is eating up a lot of time. In fact, for that reason, I'm going to wrap things up because I have to get up nice and early so I can head out to the tax offices here on the ass end of the city opposite from us tomorrow morning. So that's going to do it for this week. Hopefully you found something that you enjoyed, something that you can give a listen to. But I'll be back next Thursday at 10 p.m. Moscow time to share more new releases. I do realize that those of you in the States will be eating Christmas dinner probably at that point in time. So, not Jesus Christ, Christmas, Thanksgiving. We're not quite there to Christmas yet, but we'll get there soon enough. So for everyone who's going to be having Thanksgiving dinner next Thursday, I guess, eat some stuffing for me, because it's probably my favorite part of the holiday. I do make it at New Year's, but regardless. And then, for news, I'll be back on Sunday and then next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Moscow time. So everyone have a good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of the day it is, where you happen to be. You take care of yourselves, and I will see you when I see you. But until then, пока-пока.